Hi everyone, this is Constellations here, and I'm glad to be able to give you guys Baizhu Math Guide 2. So Baizhu is actually so straightforward that I actually don't need to do any more Baizhu Math Guides after this because we have covered the Constellation, large bears, and weapons here. This is so straightforward as a support character. So I'll quickly go through, try my best to quickly go through the entire section here. You can always jump to the TLDR if you can't afford the whole time, yeah? Watch through the whole video. Without further ado, let me dive right in. We have the Baizhu Cyno comp. I already previously mentioned in Baizhu Math Guide 1 that I feel that Baizhu is best paired with Cyno. I mean, obviously he can still win in other comps, but there are better options for other comps. So, yep. So obviously Baizhu provides you buff, heals, shield, longest of field Dendro application, assuming, or rather longest unconditional of field Dendro application, because Nahida's is Dendro, Nahida's is conditional, although it can be longer. Now Nahida here as the second Dendro to provide Dendro resonance, 250 EM on field buff for her from her own kit. She does have good Dendro damage, at least in the case of Cyno's rotation as for the first wave, or maybe with the second wave you want to reapply, and especially for bosses, right? C2 buff is good too. Now Cyno as the main, and he's finally getting some love, but it's only about extra 2 seconds of off-field Dendro application worth of love, but it's still good. Okay, he's still better than. I mean, he still remains as the best option. Baizhu still remains as the best Dendro off-field applicator for Cyno. Now the fourth slot is kind of flex, depending on whether you want to go Agra Spread or Quick Bloom. Agra Spread obviously you use Electro, Quick Bloom you use Hydro. But generally speaking, I'll say that if your Cyno is well invested, right, i.e. his personal damage is good, it's better to go Agra Spread. Especially if your second Electro is well invested too, for example Yae or even Raiden. Because I can tell you the Raiden Q plus the C6 Nahida every other rotation is actually very strong. But obviously that's Omega build and it's strong because it's you build to get that level. So yeah, I mean I just want to list it out here as an option. Obviously I know it's not accessible to everyone. Okay. Now otherwise you can go Hydro if you don't want Aggro Spread or if your Cyno is not as well invested as he can be. Then you can consider going Hydro with either Xingqiu or Yelan because Xingqiu gives you more cost, though your reaction limit may not be as noticeable. But he also provides other stuff like damage reduction, interaction resistance, and a little bit of healing too, although you don't really need it with Baizhu. Now, Yelan gives you a damage bonus that eventually ramps up, and Yelan also has a potential to use allergy. Like if you have allergy, you give it to her, she can provide even more EM buff to the team, so that's nice. Now, personally, I would likely go with Yae, though I will still test out Xingqiu Yelan for fun when we get Baizhu. I also think that Yelan will be better than Xingqiu if you have higher personal damage on Cyno too, but if your personal damage is high enough for Cyno, I would recommend you to use Aggro Spread anyway. Yeah. And personally another thing is that I don't like to sacrifice my Yelan damage for more ER as a solo Andro. I mean it's definitely doable, but you don't need to. That's what I'm trying to say here. Definitely you can either go use Yelan or Xingqiu. No harm. Now, going Hydro also means that you either need more ER on your Cyno, or you need to pull off the perfect 4TF combo. If you understand how 4TF works on Cyno, basically the moment you miss up any of the timing or you have to dodge or whatever, right, your 4TF combo will be messed up and your number of E's will be reduced. Yeah? And because Baizhu's shields are weak, it will likely cause this as well. Because his shield is very weak. I'll show you guys the level, the strength of his shield later. In terms of the figures. Yeah. So yeah. I personally would still prefer 4GD on Cyno. Especially in this comp where Baizhu shield isn't exactly strong. Because you gotta understand that a heavy hit that breaks your shield at the same time will send you flying, will interrupt you. Okay? But if you go 4GD on Cyno, then you need to sacrifice to get more ER. So there's always a trade-off involved here. Now, budget options wise, obviously Nahida can be replaced with either DMC or Kole. Fisher can be replacing Yae or the Flex Electro slot here, and obviously Xingqiu for Yelan. Right? If you don't have Yelan, Xingqiu, that kind of options, those type of options. Now, obviously, Quick Bloom is the more F2P friendly option, especially if your Cyno is not well invested or unlucky with artifacts. Okay, so bear this in mind. Now, for the purpose of my math, I will do Aggro Spread because that is a higher potential figure. Okay, min-max wise. So rotation is pretty simple. I mean, Cyno E at the start, followed by Nahida E, because our Nahida is with 4GD here. But start using Cyno E first, Nahida gets to proc the 4GD effect effectively. Then you go on to use her Q, which will then give you more EM because of the 100 EM from 4GD. Okay? And then you have Yae E, you have Baizhu EQ, then you have Cyno action time, which is obviously a E followed by Q, and then you know, just go do your usual combo. I'm not going to go into detail on his combo here, yeah? I mean, that should be pretty straightforward right now. We are really looking at how Baizhu works here in terms of optimizing him as a support in a Cyno comp. There's an alternate rotation that you can do here where you try to split out the Q actions with the E. I mean, obviously, this has a higher energy impact. But if you look at my ER requirements later, this is fine. But main thing of this is the whole purpose of this alternative is really to maximize the Nahida 250 EM buff time, especially if you do not have C1 Nahida or you don't have any Hydro in team, then you need. But in return, you will need higher ER, okay, on Nahida. It's not so bad for Baizhu, because Nahida's E then goes to Baizhu. Something like that. I mean, not exactly in terms of the timing, but it kind of works out. Okay, so these are the rotations, the main and the alternative. Now, some quick notes on the rotation. Quicken should last until the end of like Cyno 18 seconds Q, with the 14 seconds from Baizhu's Q. Because Quicken lasts like 6 to 9 seconds, depending on the elemental gauge. I don't want to go too much into detail on that, but always just remember that Quicken usually lasts 6 to 9 seconds. Worst case scenario 6. So if you look at this, right, it's a 4-second difference. So 6 seconds, it means that we are able to have Baizhu Q lasting the entire duration of Cyno Q, if Baizhu Q is always right in front of Cyno. But if you consider the 1 second from Cyno E and then the 2 second from the Q burst animation, it's 3 seconds. So 3 plus 4 is 7 seconds. So your quicken, there may be a 1 second period where there's no longer any more quicken on the opponent. It's possible, but I mean I do need to highlight this, okay? But either way, you can also choose to end your Cyno Q earlier once your Baizhu Q is over, if you want to, right? I mean, quicker is still there, but you have lesser procs. So I would choose depending on combat situation to continue if only 1 or 2 stragglers, right? You know, because if you only have 1 to 2 stragglers, you should just continue your Cyno Q. Now, the first Cyno E is not just for energy. It is also to trigger 4GD effect on Nahida so that her Q can enjoy the plus 100 EM on cast. Like I mentioned this earlier, right? If you have C1 Baizhu, obviously there's no harm using E 2 times in a row, provided there's no waiting time required for particle generation. What this means is that, you know, some characters, their E, you actually wait until the particles you have received before you use the second E, and before the second E will generate particles. For some characters, it doesn't. So it really depends. This I need to test out before I can say for sure. But another option would be to use it before the Nahida E, in the main rotation. Yeah, okay, in the main rotation. Or actually even here is fine. Yeah, because it's C1, you have 2 charges. Okay, I already talked about our alternative rotation, so I'll skip this point. And obviously Yae's Q can be used every other rotation, but you should do a shorter Cyno Q when your Yae Q is used, because there's more on-field time being taken up by Yae in that scenario. Right? So rotation-wise, I think it's pretty straightforward. Let's talk about the energy in rotation and the ER requirements. You'll notice the ER figure is not very high, which is very, very surprising, right? Because like this guy needs 80 energy on his burst, this guy needs 80 energy, this lady needs 90, and this lady needs 50. I mean, 50 is not so bad. So first off, before you get surprised about this low ER, I have to even highlight that I'm actually making a very conservative assumption. I'm not even counting like Nahida E getting the full particle generation throughout the entire rotation, because once your enemies are dead, Nahida's E will not be generating energy again unless you reapply. So I've already only included 2 instances. So first instance is basically on your cast and the first proc. Second instance is just assuming that the enemies can last until the second instance, because you've got to remember in that part of the rotation you're still doing your setup. It's not the high energy or high damage section yet. And worst case scenario, you can even swap in Nahida to do a second application before you go into use your Cyno. Possible as well. Okay, so Nahida actually needs higher ER here, but it's not that high because it's only 110. I'll talk more about that later. So yeah, the rotation does allow Baizhu to receive the particles from her second instance of generation. And like I said, if you want to use Nahida E to reapply, the perfect time is right before Baizhu E, so he will still receive the particles. Okay. So from the math above, this is basically a 110 to 100 to 110 ER team, which is pretty crazy. Because what this means is that this, by the way, this is without C4 Cyno or without, it's also without C1 by 2, which means that C1 by 2 is actually less beneficial in such a comp where I don't really need more energy particles. Now, why is our energy so high? It's partly thanks to the electro resonance, although it doesn't do much for the Dendro characters, but it helps a lot for the electro characters. And then you have an extra Cyno E, right? Giving more particles again. And then you have the Nahida E providing particles too. Okay, so this is the whole beauty about a Dendro battery, right? I personally always prefer having two Dendro, two Electro, rather than one Dendro, triple Electro. I just find that there's a lot more benefits from that. But obviously, this is assuming that the combo allows for the full rotation, especially in the case of electro resonance particle, right? Or electro resonance particles, because electro resonance particles they generate on a 5-second cooldown, every 5 seconds. So if your combat lasts shorter than that, then obviously you get lesser particles. Right now we are assuming 6 or 5 particles because the whole rotation is like 29 seconds. Now, if you want to play safe, you can always get extra 10 ER throughout, or just aim 120 ER for all the characters because more or less this is covered by base rules. Okay, but for me, one thing to note is that this is with the signature weapon, and I'll talk more about Prototype Ember, which is here in red. So basically, with this lower ER, it means that we can go for more crit stat or EM, right? EM for flexibility in the other comps, crit stats if aggro spread only for Baizhu. Now I know the ER requirements looks very low, but like I said, it's also partly because of all the generation that I'm talking about, and also the direct energy restoration impact from his signature weapon. You have 27 energy from the signature weapon at R1 at C0. So it's 80 minus 27. He's like having a 53 energy burst basically. 53 energy costs. And just to give put into perspective, 27 is like Raiden's Q. It can vary depending on her ER, but yeah, you get the gist, right? Not to mention, this is not a solo Dendro comp. So that's why Baizhu can afford lower ER. If it's a solo Dendro without electro resonance, then you're probably going to need 170 ER with our signature and 190 with R5 Prototype Ember to be safe. I've not done the math for this. Don't quote me on this, but this is my guesstimate. Yeah, based on the experience so far that we had with a 80 energy burst character without a battery. Now for Prototype Ember, basically just add on plus 20 ER to the figures. Okay, any of the figures I mentioned here, just add plus 20 ER for R5 Prototype Ember versus the R1 signature. But to be honest with you guys, since the ER is already so low, right? It really diminishes the energy restoration benefit of his signature weapon versus R5 Prototype Ember. I'll talk more about this in detail in the weapon section. But you can start to see, right? You can start to see that the energy restoration from the R1 signature isn't as great as you would think it is, at least in this comp, where he has no energy issues at all. Okay, now let's go dive into the Baizhu figures. 50k HP support focus. Yeah, I'm not doing like a full DPS calculation. It doesn't make sense to do full DPS on him. If you want to be talking about optimizing and min-maxing. Now, like I said, we are building Baizhu as a support here with 50k HP being his absolute first priority. Okay, so the figures I'm sharing here is really more of how to plan and build the other stats on your Baizhu. 50k is always the first priority. Now, before we look at the figures, let me just quickly show you guys how we achieve the 50k HP. Okay, this is obviously for maximizing his A4 bonus. Now, in terms of the stats, you can either go triple HP, or you go HP with crit, or with EM. So these are the permutations I have here. I'll show you guys the figures later. It's basically what I can say is that it's not much of a difference between these two. Whether you will have a EM as your next focus after HP or you have an EM main piece, it doesn't make a difference in terms of overall stats because the final achievable figure is the same, although it can make it easier for you to use EM main stat, especially if you're able to get more HP sub roles. Yeah. So yeah, Likewise for creep. Triple HP with creep substats versus double HP with a creep main stat. But more importantly, let's talk about the main stat HP. How to achieve it is actually very, very straightforward. If you're using triple HP, which is these 4 columns here, this is the HP percentage you will need. Now the crit stats have a higher demand on your substats, resulting in lower resulting no space for base or flat HP, which is why you need additional 5% HP. But this is really good because if you think about this, when you use triple HP, the only HP percentage you can now get is from your flower or your feather. So you only need 15% HP across or 15 to 20% HP across from your flower and feathers. So that's good. On the other hand, the EM main stat piece or the crit main stat piece, those are not easy in terms of the HP percentage you need to get. You actually need to get 60 to 65%, which means that on average, on your pieces that can get HP percentage as a artifact row, i.e. those without HP percent means that, because you have 2 HP percentage means that artifacts, right? So you have 3 that you can roll HP percentage substats on. And you need to get 20% on average on each of them. It's not easy. It's not easy. Okay? But if you do manage to get it, then you can go for that option. But I just wanted to permutate the stats so that we know how it works. So you see that for the triple HP for Baizhu, along with his signature weapon plus his ascension stat, plus triple HP main stat pieces, you will still need a little HP percentage on the stats, on the flower and feather. Alright? Okay, so that's how to reach the 50k HP on him. Now let's go look into the figures directly right now. So first thing I'll say is, like I said, the damage figure is not high. Okay, it's not going to be high. It's not going to be high because he is a support character after all, right? Even at C6, he's only dealing like what, 200 plus k damage, 29 seconds. Although it's in his entire rotation period rather than a full 29 seconds, but you get what I mean here. So yeah, it's not great, right? Now these are the heals. You see that C0 heal is already pretty decent if you go 50k HP, right? You already have 8.3k heal. The C2 effect, this is in case you're wondering how much the C2 effect heals, this is the amount. And then you have your C5 with your plus 3 talent levels, right? What it gives you. And it's like going from 8k to 10k heal. Not really necessary, to be honest. And then you have the shield, the C0 shield, this is the amount. But this is the shield healing, okay? What I mean by shield healing is the spirit vein healing, not the actual shield. The actual shield is over here. 801,000, that's it. Yeah, 801,000, that's it. That's why I say his shields are very weak. So what I can conclude from these figures, right, it's actually very straightforward. After achieving 50k HP, going for crit stats in Agra Spreadcom is better than going EM, because you see here, the crit stat figures are higher than the EM, right? Correspondingly, 68.9 versus 64.9, and 68.9 versus 66. Yeah. Now, EM technically offers you more flexibility, but if you really think about it, there's not much use cases for Baizhu as a reaction trigger, is there? Definitely not Hyper Bloom or Burgeon. He's not going to be the one triggering reaction, so EM is also useless on him. He has no EM skilling in his kit. And as for Bloom, his Dendro application is a little too low for generating 6 fast enough, especially against mobs, especially as a solo Dendro. So I really don't see the need to build EM on him. Like, if you want to put him in a Bloom comp, and by Bloom comp I mean like Rupture, not Hyper Bloom or Burgeon, there's still not enough value for him as a EM. I mean, like, Nahida does the job much better, and they are on the same. They are available in the same version, right? Next version you have Baizhu on the second phase, Nahida on first phase. If your focus is a Bloom comp, I think a Rupture comp, then Nahida is the better option. Why build Baizhu for that? That's what I feel. Okay, now, but if you look at the figures as well, there's also no real need to build crit on Baizhu, right? It's so small, the figure. Why would I need to build crit on him? But it's what you expect from a support anyway. And even if C0 offers you, if you look at C0 C6, it actually gives you more than 3 times the damage. So you're getting like what, 300% value? But because the base value is so low that it's just not worth it, right? It's not like a typical DPS character when you go from 0 to 80%, you get 80% boost from a cumulative C0 C6. It makes a difference because the base figure was already high to begin with. In this case, it's just way too low. So the simplest way to build Baizhu is just to go 50k HP. And then get some get a bit of ER like 110 to 120 ER with the R1 signature, or 130 to 140 with R5 Prototype Ember in this comp at least. Now, if it's solo Dendro and / or no electron resonance, then you go for the targets I mentioned in the energy section. Simple as that. So building Baizhu is actually very, very simple. Okay. Let's quickly talk about the constellations, because if you see here, wow, there's a huge boost, right? But if you think about it, it's still not great in terms of absolute value. So, just C0 is sufficient for Baizhu, even if I will. Even if I will, I would say just go C0, don't need to waste your money. Yes, pulling for Nahida's weapon R5 or something is still better than this. Okay, seriously. Because more Dendro application from the constellations are mainly for triggering spreads on your Baizhu in this comp. Which again is roll damage anyway, so why would you need the more Dendro application? Okay, now, and for bloom related comps, like I said, you're better off with Nahida. I'd rather you spend the cons that you're getting from on Baizhu to onto Nahida. Because Nahida constellations are a lot better. I mean, obviously, if you want to run both Nahida and Baizhu like I am in this comp, right? It's also okay. But some bloom related comps can't do this, right? I mean, in this comp, this is a grass spread. It's not bloom related comps. Most bloom related comps, you can't really afford to run double Dendro most of the time. Okay, it really depends on how you're setting it up. But regardless, you still don't need Baizhu constellations because Nahida alone provides enough Dendro application for your bloom related comps anyway. Okay. So, I mean, if you're doing one of those bloom related comps, right? Usually there's no issue. There's usually a window available to reapply Nahida E. So that's why I don't think it's that great. But obviously, if you like Baizhu more than Nahida, then you go get your Baizhu. Okay, simple as that. Now for the heal and shields, right? The impact of the constellations are very bad too. All you get is an additional 2k healing from your E. You get 1k healing from Q, and then your shields go from 800 plus to 1000. Which really doesn't matter, right? Especially if you think about the cost required to get these constellations. C4 has some value. I'll say C4 is one of its best constellations, but the EM that it gives is too low to be impactful. I mean, it's 80 EM, it's not 120 EM. Although it has a good duration, to be fair, it's like 15 seconds unconditional. So that's the only good thing going for it, for his constellations. So I'll say Baizhu is actually a very F2P friendly character in the sense that you can just get C0 and use the R5 Prototype Ember. Stats wise, just get 50k HP and the ER levels that I shared earlier. To be honest, even his talents feel like a waste of the new weekly boss materials to go beyond base level 6. Right? And I don't even feel like spending it on him. I'd rather save it from the new characters. Okay, but anyway. Comms wise, please refer to Math Guide 1 and the concept section in this video. I think I've covered enough for that. But what I've mentioned here is in terms of building him. If I'm given a choice, if I'm given a choice between Nahida and him, C0 of them both, it's a no-brainer to get a Nahida for me. Personally, unless you're a hardcore Cyno main. Alright? Because, okay, the biggest problem with Baizhu is the fact that his Dendro application are all pretty much single target. Okay, that's the biggest problem. That's the reason why I keep saying that Nahida is better. Okay, to be fair. I mean, make it very clear. He actually does have a very good off-field Dendro duration in terms of constant application. But his problem is it's only single target. Against like multiple enemies, right, you still have the issue where a lot of them are not getting Dendro applied onto them. Alright, now let's talk about artifacts. So, as a support character, he's pretty clear, right? He's the 4-piece Deepwood holder, right? Deepwood memories holder. I don't think an artifact compensator is required for him because 4DM is too good to give up for like 20% HP X2. Because you always need a 4DM effect if you are doing like a Bloom comp. If you are doing Agra spread comp, you have another spread DPS. That spread DPS will also benefit from it. So the only scenario I can see him not using 4DM, it will be something like 1 Dendro, 3 Electro, where you are just going full aggravate and your Dendro is your only support character. So if that's the scenario, then yeah, you can consider something like 4 Nobilis. But either way, I'll just build him with 4 DM to make it straightforward. Yeah? Okay, let's talk about weapons. Now, as a support character, weapon choices are usually more limited per se. There are 3 weapons worth considering for Baizhu: Signature, the R5 Prototype Ember, and Favonius Codex. I mean, for Favonius, obviously, you need to at least get R3+, okay, for reliability on the proc. Now, Signature weapon versus R5 Prototype Ember. The key differences will be elemental damage bonus, higher LNG restoration, and higher HP percentage. It's about 8.3% HP more on his Signature weapon. Now, the damage bonus, although it's useful for spreads, right, it's not significant because his damage output is very low to begin with, right? Given that he's providing heals and shields. So that damage bonus doesn't really matter. As for the difference in energy restoration, like I said, you just need additional 20 ER on your R5 Prototype Ember and you'll be fine. As for the HP percentage, you can make up the difference with 2 additional HP rolls on artifacts. So whatever I shared earlier in terms of 50k HP, if you're using Prototype Ember, you just add a 10% HP onto the 15% HP. Or you want to be exact, 8.3% HP. Okay? So there's no reason to pull for his signature weapon, just like Kokomi. This HP skilling, healing, shield support characters, you don't need to put their signature weapon basically, or catalyst characters, because that's R5 for Prototype Ember. This will also be the only 2 characters that I do not have signature weapons for, by the way. Like I usually do pull for signature weapon. Kokomi and Baizhu are going to be the 2 that I don't. Kokomi because, like I said, the value is very, very low. Likewise for Baizhu. For Favonius Codex, if you want to give Baizhu a bit of a universal battery roll, it's fine too. But there's an impact to his HP, right? Because you don't get HP percentage from weapon substat. To get 50k HP with Favonius Codex with triple HP means that you will pretty much need 30% HP on your flower and feather each. Because you don't have you're losing 40 to 50% HP from your substat weapon if you're not using Prototype Ember or his signature. Use something like Favonius Codex. And because you're already using triple HP based stats, right? So your only other choice is to get HP from your flower and feather. You're gonna need 30% HP, which is very, very difficult. 30% HP is basically you need to get HP upgrade in on every single artifact roll, and it needs to be a base 4 stat instead of 3 stat artifact. For reference, my highest HP percentage on my flower and feather is 26 and 21% respectively. Okay, so far across all my artifacts throughout 2 years plus of playing this game. You will also need base flat HP rolls across your artifacts as well. It's not just the 30%. You will also need base flat HP rolls across your artifacts too. So I can simply conclude it this way, okay? You need to accept that you will not have 50k HP if you intend to use Favonius Codex. Super accept. So his A4 passive will not be optimized in that case. Although I can say in the big picture of things, having close to 50k HP is fine, right? It's still okay. But to me, his A4 passive is really his key feature. So yeah, personally, I would rather prefer having his 50k HP. And if you notice how I set up my comp, right, in this guide, there is no one using Favonius weapon, okay? No one is using Favonius weapon because I don't see any Favonius energy proc in the energy table, right? But yet my ER requirements are very low because of the Dendro, electro resonance generating particles. You have a second Dendro providing battery effect to Baizhu, even though I made a very conservative assumption for Nahida Series. And then you have the Dendro resonance, which really helps with 100 EM. So yeah, I really personally don't recommend Favonius over Prototype Ember. But I guess if you are desperate for battery, it is an option. But yeah, you're much better off with Prototype Ember, which is also a craftable weapon, which makes it very, very F2P friendly. I mean, it's full F2P, okay? So yeah, weapon-wise, my recommendation would be R5 Prototype Ember, and I myself will be using R5 Prototype Ember too. I will not be pulling the signature weapon, pulling for his signature weapon. Also partly because his signature weapon is horrible, the banner. I mean, it's going to be together with Amos Bow, right? Why would I want to pull on that banner? Amos Bow can be obtained from the standard banner. Unless you are Gan Yumin and you really want the weapon. But other than that, eh. Alright, so I pretty much covered all that I want to cover, so let's do a quick TLDR now. Like on my mouse. So in my opinion, like I said in Baizhu Math Guide 1, Baizhu is best paired with Cyno given his longest off-field Dendro application duration amongst the current roster of Dendro characters. So you can go for Quick Bloom if your Cyno is not well invested and Air Grasp if your Cyno is. This is the rotation and the alternative rotation. I'm not going to go through that in detail. Please refer to a specific section for the details on why the rotation is set up as such and what the focus is for Baizhu in the comp. Alright. Now, ER requirements. In this comp with double Dendro and double Electro, we are actually able to lower the ER requirements across the entire comp to a range of 110 to 120 ER, i.e. it's all covered by base rules. If Baizhu is solo Dendro, in a comp where he's a solo Dendro, without electro resonance as well, you will need a lot more ER, especially at C0. You probably need like 170 ER with a signature weapon. Okay? And this, like I said, all of this, right, all the energy math here is with his signature weapon and R1. He's at C0 and there's no C4 Cyno give you energy too. Okay? So with a R5 prototype Ember, you should add plus 20 ER to the figures above. In terms of Baizhu stats, right, based on the figures that we have, right, basically HP takes the first priority here because we are focusing on here as a support. And by the way, just for fun, right, in my math, right, I did try giving him full crit stats and DPS min stats, right, along with like using a Kagura's. His DPS is only 200 plus K at C0, including spreads. So yeah, you're better off going support. Okay. So what stats after HP? Because I already said 50k HP is your first priority, right? So I do highly recommend that you like the figure section before going through this conclusion here. Basically, after achieving 50k HP, going for crit stats in Anglo aspect is better than going EM, but it's not by much. There's no real need to build EN on him outside of spread, since he wouldn't be the reaction trigger in Hyperbloom Virgin, and his Dendro application is a little weak for solo Dendro in blue comps, so I'd rather use someone else. Yeah? Like Nahida, who is also in the same version, so you can't say that you have to wait for Nahida. Now, if you look at the figures, right, there's also no real need to build crit on Baizhu. So the simplest way to build him is actually very straightforward. Just get 50k HP and get 110 to 120 ER with R signature, or 130 to 440 ER with R5 prototype Ember in this particular comp. If it's solo Dendro and / or no electro resonance, then you go for the targets I've mentioned in the energy section. Right? Let's talk about Constellations next. Baizhu is actually a F2P friendly character in the sense that you can pretty much just get C0. Kinda like Kokomi, really. So why do I say this? So first off, more Dendro application from his constellations are mainly for triggering spreads on Baizhu in this comp, and also to help a bit extend the quicken duration, right? But you don't really need those additional Dendro application for a constellations to do that, right? For extending the quicken, you don't really need it. So it's really just for triggering spreads, which isn't high damage anyway, so it doesn't help in this comp. And if you talk about bloom related comps, like I said, you're just better off with Nahida. Okay? You're just better off with Nahida. Let's face it. Now, for heals and shields, right, the impact of Constellations is also very bad. All you get is like additional 2k healing from your E, 1k healing from Q, and additional 1.5 to 2k from the C2. But it's not gonna matter because that happens every 5 seconds. That triggers every 5 seconds. And then you have your shields going from 800 plus or low 800s to 1000. So that really doesn't matter as well, especially given the cost of Constellations. C4 is decent, but like I said, EM value is too low for the cost even if the duration is good. So yeah, even if you are Will, right, my recommendation is just get C0 of him. You don't really need more Constellations. Of course, if you're Omega Will who sees his R5 everything, I don't think you'll be watching my video to begin with, so that's that. But yeah. Now, R5 prototype Ember is very, very straightforward. It's the go-to option for his weapons. Now, if you want more details, refer to the weapon section. I just want to quickly call that Baizhu is going to be the second character where I'm not going to put signature weapon for. The first is Kokomi. So that should speak volumes, yeah? Okay, artifacts, very straightforward. 4DM will be his universal set, right? You can consider 4 Noblies for a solo Dendro in an aggravate comp. You can consider 20% HP adds to, which means the 2-piece tenacity with the 2-piece new artifact that has HP percentage. The so-called Dehya's artifact set. Now, those may have some value if you're using Favonius with him, because like I said, Favonius, you have a huge challenge in trying to get. Basically, you need completely perfect artifacts to get 50k HP with Favonius. So the 20% HP S2 artifact sets may have artifact build may have some benefit. But again, that's only if you do not need the 4DM effect on him or in the comp itself. So yeah, generally speaking, just get 4DM. And that brings me to the end of this video. And the end of Baizhu video series actually. Because in this video alone, we cover all of this, right? Because it's so straightforward that I don't even need to go deep into like the constellation in terms of like percentage comparison, likewise for the refinement as well. And even for the weapon math, I don't really need to. So yeah, that's that. And trust me on 130 ER, the plus 20 ER on Prototype Ember, because I actually did the math for Prototype Ember already. Because like I told you guys, right, I'm using Prototype Ember. That's why I already did the math. In fact, I already have a set ready for Baizhu with 50k HP, with R5 Prototype Ember, and 130 ER. 132 or 133 ER. So he's done. I'm already done building him right now. I'm just waiting for him to be available. So yeah, he's a very, very straightforward character. There's no real need for me to do like the long video series that I usually do. So I do hope that this math guide is helpful to you guys. I'll probably move on to do Carve next. Yeah, I probably need to start Carve math guides. Yeah. Now in the comments, you guys can still let me know if there's any specific Baizhu math you want to see. But that really depends on whether or not it's fundamentally different from this comp, and also whether it's worth it to use him. Because I can tell you, in terms of the Dendro application, it's not that great. I mean, what he has going for him is the longest off-field duration plus constant application, but it's single target. That's his biggest weakness. But I guess with his shields and heals, there has to be some weakness in his kit, right? And besides, it's not an Archon. Obviously, the Archon has to be better. So yeah, that's that. Alright, thanks everyone for watching. I hope this video has been helpful to you guys. If you like the content, remember my video and click subscribe for more. Bye.